Welcome back. It is Saturday night. And what do I do on Saturday nights? Power rankings. This time of year, I should be doing power rankings. I should be watching hockey games and doing power rankings. So, with that in mind, I'm going to try to rank the 31 tandems as they're currently constituted as of November 7th. They could change. There's still free agents that are out there. There could still be trades to be made. But I'm going with what the depth charts are right now. And trying to rank the battery, as it's known, your two goaltenders, and trying to rank that is difficult. And I've been kind of racking my brain on this for a bit because there are certain aspects I have to look at. I cannot guarantee, I cannot stand here and say, well, this rookie's going to be great and this rookie's going to suck, because we just don't know. So we can assume that Sorokin, Samsonov, and Shesterkin are all going to have great seasons. We just don't know. So I had to kind of say, you know what? I can't make that assumption that as a tandem, teams that have rookies in net are necessarily going to have great seasons. And then there's the situations too where, has this guy been a starter before? Do they have a bona fide number one goaltender? Do they have an elite level goaltender? Like, there's a lot that went into this. So I know people are going to skip to the end. I know there's people who are just going to go to the end and say, I don't understand this team being in that spot. I don't know what to say to that other than I will do my best to explain and go over who's in each spot. We're going to start at 31 with the Blackhawks. Now, I like Delia. I like Lankinen. And maybe Subban can have a good year. I can't assume that those goalies are going to outperform other goaltenders in the National Hockey League and that their tandem right now doesn't on paper look like the 31st best. I can't. I can't find a way to get there. When I was doing up this list, Chicago at 31st made a lot of sense. And at 30th, San Jose. Now, Martin Jones can be better. Devin Dubnyk can be better. Both of them had save percentages well below 900. So I can't get there with San Jose. And so for me, San Jose and Chicago, those were the easy calls. Those were the two that I didn't really have any trouble just saying, all right, that's the first two off the board. Chicago and San Jose. Because again, Martin Jones, I like Martin Jones. I want him to bounce back. I want him to prove me wrong. I want Dubnyk to bounce back as well. Because a couple years back when they got killed by Winnipeg in the first round, I said, hey, it's not on Dubnyk, even though there were plenty of people who thought it was. But his numbers since then haven't been, that strong. Number 29, Buffalo. And I think Sabres fans realize this is still potentially the kryptonite for this team. I like Ullmark. I don't know about Hutton. And I don't know about the two of them together if I see a goaltender that gets Buffalo over the hump. I don't know that I see a goaltender who is going to steal some games. And that's part of it too, is which goaltenders are going to steal games. So for me, I have Buffalo in 29th. And I went back and forth between 26 and 29. In 28th, I have Detroit. Detroit picked up Thomas Greiss. But Greiss is coming out of New York, and the Islanders tend to bring up the stats of goaltenders, it seems. And I don't know if at this stage, at this age for Greiss, if I see him as a potential starter. Bernier had a very good year, but part of what amplified the year Bernier had is how bad Jimmy Howard was in the backup role for Detroit. So I think that while Bernier played well, it definitely made it look better when he had Howard as his teammate there. And I like Jimmy Howard too, but at some point the fact that Shannon likes everybody, I still have to make decisions on this. And so to me, Bernier and Greiss, we'll see how Greiss does behind a defensive scheme that's not going to be as good as what he had in front of him with the Islanders. And he didn't look great in the return either. So when he was called upon by the Islanders, it was clear that Varlamov was the better of the two goalies. So we'll see if he bounces back. Number 27, I have Minnesota. Now, I agree that they needed to make changes. When Bill Guerin came out and said, we need to make changes in net in Minnesota, he was right. But adding Talbot at the subtraction of Dubnyk, while that is an upgrade, I don't know that it brings Minnesota out of this bottom row. Stalock had a good year. Talbot had a half-decent year. Dubnyk did not have a very good year. But between the two of them, who's the starter? Is it going to be Talbot? If it's going to be Talbot, I don't know that I see Talbot necessarily getting them into a playoff spot either. So between Talbot and Stalock, it's possible that with each guy playing 50% of the games, they may win some games here and there, but I don't know that I see a game stealer. Number 26, Edmonton. Koskinen did not outplay Corey Crawford. And Mike Smith did not outplay Corey Crawford. And the fact that Smith was the goalie of record and Koskinen hasn't really taken that starting role on, and the fact that they've kept that same tandem for this coming season, I don't know. I look at that Oilers tandem and maybe that's the reason why when we talk about the Canadian division, people will focus on Toronto ahead of the Oilers because they look at Koskinen and Smith and say, well, and again, Oiler fans weren't that happy that Smith was coming back. I understood why. If you look at the other options, there really weren't a lot of options that were going to work. They've been clearly not in on or didn't get far enough with Holtby, and they missed out on Markstrom. So the Oilers sadly end up in this bottom row. 25th, this is where there's a bit of a reach, and I'm going to admit that. The Senators, you could put down as low as 27th. People are going to, hey, why aren't the Senators lower down? I think it's going to help Murray being out of Pittsburgh. I think Murray was better than his numbers this year. I still think Matt Murray is capable. And Anders Nilsson was pretty good for the Sens. So if that's their tandem, Nilsson could very well be huge for Ottawa as he was at points last year. And then you've got Högberg as likely the number 3, maybe the number 2. If Nilsson's not good to go, we'll see. So Ottawa, I have at 25th, partly because I think Murray's a bit of a bounce-back candidate. He does have 2 cup rings, and so that's why I have them ahead of these other teams. I could totally understand, again, if you want to put them in 30th, go right on ahead. 24th, I have Pittsburgh. Now, Jari had a good year. He did. DeSmith cleared waivers and played in the minors. DeSmith is okay as a backup, but I'm not sure. I mean, you can look at going from Murray to DeSmith and say, well, it's kind of a lateral move because Murray wasn't very good last year. But to me, I don't know. I do have Pittsburgh ahead of Ottawa because I like Jari more than Murray. That's basically what it came down to. All right, I will put Jari ahead of Murray. DeSmith against Nilsson, right? So is Nilsson a better goaltender than DeSmith? You could argue that maybe he is. He hasn't been demoted to the minors. He hasn't cleared waivers, and DeSmith did. But when DeSmith cleared waivers, maybe there weren't any teams looking for goaltending. See, this is the whole torture of trying to grade goaltending tandems. Number 23, and this one's tough. Jonathan Quick. I understand there are Kings fans who love Jonathan Quick, and I understand there's hockey fans in general who love Quick. So do I. Jonathan Quick is not the goaltender now that he was, say, 5 years ago. Cal Peterson, I think, is going to be an excellent starter, but this is where experience comes in. Peterson has not been a starting goaltender for a full season. As much as I like Peterson, I can't have the Kings up ahead of a bunch of teams that have a proven starter in net. I can't do it. I can't get there because then it just, to me, it destroys this whole power ranking system. Which is why, similar reasoning, 22, I have the Capitals. Samsonov has not been a starting goaltender yet. This goes back to the whole Vasilevsky thing. And I remember years back when I talked about Vasi not having been a starter yet, and Tampa fans said, hey, you got nothing to worry about. Vasi's going to be great. And he was. But until a goaltender is a starter, we just don't know. There have been goaltenders who have been good in the backup role, and then they become a starter, and it kind of doesn't work. So Samsonov and Lundqvist. Lundqvist is coming off of the worst season of his career. It's possible he has a huge bounce back with the Caps. Debuted brand new gear today, and that was awesome. And while I like the new gear from Lundqvist and the whole idea of Lundqvist turning things around, I have Washington at 22. Samsonov has not been a starter as of yet. 21, there you go. See, now you guys know where I'm going with this, right? So Shesterkin, Georgiev, neither of them have been a starter yet. I like Georgiev a lot, and I think Shesterkin's going to be dynamite. But until we see it over a full season, it's hard to say. With the season being potentially squashed, potentially having fewer games that are played over a shorter period of time, and a lot of back-to-backs, that could be stressful for inexperienced goaltenders. Now, it's possible they ride that out, that the adrenaline and not having days off to even get panicked about it, maybe it helps, but it could wear them down too. It could be tough for them. So, to me, the Rangers, while they could potentially, going into next season, be a team we look at and say they're 5 or 6 on the board, and Shesterkin's great and Georgiev's great, I haven't seen either of them perform as a starter over a full season. Basically, we had the 3-man rotation with the Rangers that did not work. So now that the Lundqvist distraction has gone to Washington, now they have a chance to show what they can do. So I'm hoping the Rangers end up being a lot better on this than where they are right now. Number 20, Islanders. So the Islanders with Varlamov have a goaltender who was the starter for the Islanders, performed very well for them through until the conference finals, and he really was excellent, and he dueled Vasilevsky quite well in that conference finals. But now he has Sorokin as the backup. So it's that same idea of the young, what is it with all the Russian goaltenders, right? And they're all in the same division. This is going to be fascinating to watch this year. Sorokin, inexperienced at the NHL level, projects to be very good. And because the Islanders are capable of getting goaltenders to turn their numbers around. They did it with Leonard, who has continued to perform well since leaving the Islanders. They did it with Greiss. They've done it with Varlamov. There's no reason to think Sorokin won't have good numbers. There's no reason to think the Islanders won't have one of the better goals against and save percentages in the league with the kind of goaltending coaching they have. But with Sorokin, I have him in 20th because we haven't seen it yet. Number 19, I have the Ducks. John Gibson is one of the best goalies in the league. I believe that. I really do. But if Stolarz, who right now projects to likely be the backup, if he's the backup, I have some doubts. And, I mean, Stolarz, much like a couple others on the board that I've already talked about, passes through waivers, ends up in the minors. I don't know. I'm not convinced that the Ducks won't eventually say, so we've decided to bring back Miller for one more year. I'm not convinced that they won't decide, you know what, we'll give Jimmy Howard a year at league minimum and we'll bring him in and see what he can do as the backup. If it doesn't work, fine, we'll bring somebody else in. But for right now, because Gibson's that good and he can play that many games, I'm fine with them being this high up and being ahead of the other teams, but I can't bump them any further up than that. And I wanted to because I like Gibson and I like what the Ducks have done. But, if Stolarz is going to be the backup, I don't know. Number 18, Carolina. Mrazek and Reimer. I don't know that Carolina has a starting goaltender that's going to steal them a bunch of games. And again, that's not necessarily the mark of what makes you a contender. But for this board, for this power rankings, it's important to have that. So Carolina, Mrazek's good. Reimer's good. Is there a starter? Right? Anyways. Yeah, so I'm trying not to over-explain it. It's just I don't know that I see a guy with Carolina that I think is getting ready. And I think Carolina is a year away from making a big change in net. Their contracts are going to be up. There's going to, I think, be a big change in net for Carolina. I'm still surprised that's not where Holtby ended up. I was pretty sure, Holtby and Carolina would make a lot of sense. But there you go. Number 17, and this was tough, St. Louis. Last year, St. Louis a lot higher than 17th. Binnington didn't have the same season he had the year before. Well, of course not. They didn't win the Cup. But in that series against Vancouver, he was the second best goaltender in a lot of that. Now, I did say at the time I didn't blame Binnington for those losses. I thought, Markstrom was fantastic. But it just feels like Binnington's trended down over the last 12 months. Now he has Husso as likely the backup. And it's the same as I've mentioned with some of these other guys. Husso does not have NHL experience. They've been, getting him ready in the minors. He may be good. I can't make the assumption that he is. I can't have Binnington lower on this list. I actually have him ahead of Gibson and Stolarz because I think Binnington can have a big bounce back for them and maybe Husso's for real. But, yeah, St. Louis leads that second row there. Number 16, surprisingly, Florida. So, Bobrovsky, right? And Drieger. I like Drieger. Hasn't had a full season in the league. Montembeault may very well beat him out for that backup job. They have 3 goaltenders who are good. They have one that's being paid a lot of money. And I think Florida would have anticipated being a lot higher on the board. And you know what? With the way that Bobrovsky played this year, if you want to throw the Panthers down here, I'm not going to argue with you, because honestly, I think he should bounce back. I think Drieger was good, but the problem is Drieger was kind of stealing his job at points this year, so we'll see if he bounces back. This is where it gets really tough. This is where I really, you know what? Okay, I would gladly put Dallas top 5, but Bishop's not playing. Bishop's not going to play until April. The season starts either in January or February. Should we have a season, it likely starts in January or February, right? And so, I don't know. I have my doubts about a tandem of Hudobin and Ottinger. I mean, Bishop eventually comes back, right? But between now and then, it's Hudobin and Ottinger, and while Ottinger looked okay, he barely saw the net in the return. It's mostly Hudobin, who, as good as Hudobin is, he's never been a starter in the NHL. He's never played that many games. So I don't know. I think I couldn't justify having them all the way down in here because look what they did in the playoffs, and Bishop's still technically there. I don't know how much time he's going to miss. I don't know how the schedule is going to look. Is it going to go into May? Is it going to end before he's back? Like, what's going to happen? So Dallas I was really torn on. And 15th is as low as I felt I could drop them with Bishop not playing. Number 14, I have Vancouver. So I'm wearing my Demko jersey. And I do think that Holtby has something of a bounce back. I didn't have him in the top 16 when I had 16 goaltenders because I don't know how much of a bounce back we can expect from Holtby after 2 down years for the Caps. And with Demko, his numbers last year during the regular season were middling. And I don't want to just say, well, he had those 2 really great games against Vegas. Clearly that's who Demko is now. As much as we love Demko, and I have the Demko jersey, I don't know. I think that Vancouver, middle of the pack, it's going to be fascinating to see. I would think the games get split 50-50. But because Holtby and Demko are both pretty good goaltenders, I have them ahead of some of the other teams down here. And Holtby's Stanley Cup ring should help. His experience should help. He should be able to bounce back. Number 13. Underrated tandem, I think, of Grubauer and Francouz. Grubauer, of course, gets hurt. Francouz gets hurt. And Colorado still forces a 7th game against Dallas with Hutchinson in net. They're number 3. I think that Grubauer and Francouz are probably a bit underrated. But at the same time, I don't have them as a top 10 tandem in the league. I think they're good. I think they're above average, clearly, if I'm looking at the league. And I think they are good enough that with the amount of goals that Colorado can score, they may be one of those rare teams that they don't need great goaltending. They just need good goaltending, and they can win a Stanley Cup. And so I have Colorado at 13th, but I don't think that necessarily rules them out for a Stanley Cup run. Number 12, Nashville. Now, Nashville depends on a bounce back from Rinne. It does. And I've already talked about Rinne, and I think he can have a bounce back season in a video I did previously this week. Whereas Saros, we'll see if he's capable as a starter. The reason that I'm giving Saros a little more leeway than some of the others on the board is we've already got, it feels like enough of a body of work with Saros, and he played enough as the starter for Nashville this year that he looks pretty comfortable as a starter. And any complaints about how he's not big enough to be a starting goalie in the NHL, I think he's ready to silence those critics. And I think he already silenced a lot of them this past 12 months, and I think that'll just continue. It does depend on a Rinne bounce back in order for me to have them ahead of Colorado and Vancouver. I could say, 14th for Nashville, probably about as low as I could go with that. Number 11, New Jersey. New Jersey, of course, has added Corey Crawford, who will be an upgrade from Corey Schneider. No offense to Corey Schneider, they went with the better of the 2 Coreys. And of course, Schneider currently is still a UFA. Despite rumors that he was going to the Islanders, it still hasn't happened. Corey Schneider's still a UFA. But in adding Corey Crawford, that experience behind Blackwood, it is a fantastic move, brilliant move by the New Jersey Devils. Blackwood's an excellent goaltender, and I really think as a tandem that should work. Now, Crawford's numbers during the regular season had their bad moments, but during that return against the Oilers and then against Vegas, he showed he can still play. So number 11. Number 10, Jets. Now, as a tandem, well, Brossoit took a bit of a drop this year, a bit, and Hellebuck was the best goalie in the league. I think Brossoit probably gets a little better than he was last year, and I think Hellebuck, he may not win a Vezina again this year, but put together, I still think they're a top 10 tandem in the NHL. With, again, that squash schedule, you may need to rely on Brossoit a little more than you did this last year, but Hellebuck is absolutely fantastic. So I have them in 10th. I think that Brossoit, I was honestly surprised they brought him back. I thought they would get a backup that would play a little more, they had a little more confidence in. I thought they would have been in on Hudobin there for Dallas. I thought there were other venues that, or other avenues they might have taken, but the Jets, I think maybe with Brossoit, they just looked and said, we're not worried about losing him to Seattle. That may very well be one of those Seattle moves. I know GMs are making those already. Number 9, Toronto Maple Leafs. Jack Campbell, the backup. I like Campbell, and it's funny because there are still people complaining about the goaltending problem with Toronto. I think it's fixed. I think Anderson and Campbell, I think it's fixed. Freddie Anderson's been overplayed the last couple of years. Overplayed because they had no faith in their backup goaltender. So, and Hutchinson's back now. He realizes he's likely going to end up playing for the Marlies. Hutchinson was very clear on this in an interview yesterday, where he basically said he picked Toronto because the Marlies are in the same city as the Maple Leafs, and you get sent down. You don't have to worry about upending your life and your family being all, thrown off. So that's why he signed with Toronto. And that's why, Toronto has an easier time signing some of these guys, because they know if I get sent down, I'm still in the same city. It's a good selling point. Vancouver should look into it. There's a building here in Abbotsford. Look into it. But with all apologies to Utica, because Utica's been a great fit for the Canucks in general. But, yeah, Toronto, I like their tandem. I think Campbell's a guy who can play more games than they were going to get with Kaskisuo or with Hutchinson or any of the other backups that have gone through the last few years. Number 8, Philly. Elliott's numbers, not fantastic, but Elliott is a decent enough goaltender. And he can spell Hart, and I think Philly clearly has confidence in Elliott. So, to start this row, I like Philly. And if they had a better backup goaltender, they'd be higher up. I think Carter Hart is one of the best young goaltenders in the game. And if you're a Devils fan and you're like, I think Blackwood's just as good. Okay, we'll find out. It's going to be fun watching him, isn't it? Number 7, Tampa. So Vasilevsky is the best goalie in the league. We can all argue about that, but he is. And just leave the hate down below. With McElhinney, my only concern with McElhinney is that he is getting to that age where goaltenders tend to dip in terms of their performance. He had that great year with Carolina, right? And then Carolina moved on, which I thought was crazy. But he didn't play a lot with Tampa this year. And yet, I don't know, his numbers were okay. They weren't fantastic. They were okay. And so I have Tampa at number 7 on the board overall. I would love to have him higher. I can't get there. And again, I know this is one of the tougher ones to do. Of power rankings, this one's really hard. Number 6, Calgary. Markstrom and Riddick. I think they're going to play more 50-50 than people might give them credit for. Because I think Riddick's going to push to get that job. I think bringing in Markstrom is not just going to be great for the Flames. I think it's going to be great for David Riddick. I think it's going to be that fire that the kids needed to go out there and try to prove himself. David Riddick still feels he's going to be a starting goaltender in the NHL. So he is going to fight to prove it. And I think Calgary's going to have the ability to reap the rewards of that one. I really do. So to me, Markstrom and Riddick is a pretty solid overall tandem. If the Flames at some point decide we want to move Riddick, I think there'll be a market for him. I wouldn't be all that surprised if when we start the season, the Flames have made a trade and Riddick's ended up somewhere else. I'm not going to say necessarily Anaheim, but somewhere down lower on the board, maybe a Buffalo, maybe Carter Hutton goes to Calgary along with, a pick, and then you have Riddick and Ullmark as the goaltenders in Buffalo. Something along those lines, just saying. But for now, he's the backup, and we'll see what happens. Number 5, Coyotes. So Darcy Kemper and Antti Ranta, I cannot deny that's one of the better tandems in the league. So while I had Kemper lower down than I think there were numerous people who thought I had Kemper too low on the starting goaltenders list. Really solid goaltending tandem overall. And again, if Ranta gets hurt, they have Aiden Hill. Aiden Hill's numbers in the NHL are really good too. So they're good to 3 deep mostly. And if Kemper can follow up what he did this year with another year like that next year, and again, there have been rumors on and off about him being traded. I don't understand that. I'm never going to understand that. Number 4, the Vegas Golden Knights. With Fleury as the backup to Leonard, I think you'll see a much better Marc-Andre Fleury. We can all have the debate about, how horrible Peter DeBoer is if we want to, but I don't see it. And honestly, if Fleury's getting nights off, he's going to be better. He's going to be fresh. And that's been a problem for Vegas throughout their existence, that they were relying way too much on Marc-Andre Fleury. He was being overplayed, absolutely overplayed. Playing, 15, 16, 17 games sometimes in a row. It was ridiculous. They didn't have any faith in Subban. They didn't have any faith in Dansker. They would have brought him up and tried him. There was no faith given to anybody that wasn't Fleury, and he was getting played into the ground. Now, you have 2 legit goaltenders. Leonard's going to get played. I don't think he'll get played anywhere near as much as Fleury did. Fleury will see the net enough, and I think it's going to benefit him. It could very well prolong his career. So for the complaints about Marc-Andre Fleury not being the starter, I think you'll see him play longer if he's playing less. I think it cuts down on the bumps and bruises. It leaves you fresher for the next game. And he's already proven in his career that if he plays less, he's still fine. He proved that with Pittsburgh in years that he wasn't necessarily the starter. Number 3, Boston. Yes, they're old. Yep. Rask and Halak are old. They're also a very smart, well put together tandem. And I think we're going to get one more year of really good stats out of these 2 guys. Next year, all bets are off. Next year, it all changes because I think this is going to be the last year for Rask. And I don't think Boston has anybody ready to take over as the starter the year after. Does Halak become the starter next year? How do you do this? Is Swayman going to be ready? Does Vlader get a chance to be the starter next year? I think there's a lot of questions to be answered for the Boston Bruins, and we'll see what happens with Rask. I would keep an eye on the contract situation. Do they re-sign him? So yeah, number 3 is Boston. Number 2, Columbus. I didn't forget this team. This team's actually number 1. Number 2, I have Columbus. They proved last year, Merzlikins, Korpisalo. It doesn't matter. They're both pretty darn solid. So while I wouldn't have either of them as like the top 5 goaltenders, and I didn't, right, for the starters, I have to say it is a very good tandem. It doesn't matter. And if you get down to Kivlenix looked pretty good too. They have 3 NHL level goaltenders, which is why I think it makes some sense that they might have looked into trading one of their top 2 goaltenders this offseason. Didn't get it done. They end up making a trade with Montreal that nets them Max Domi, and they think Domi's going to help them down the middle. And we'll see if that's true or not. Which means that number 1, goaltending tandems. Now, I had Carey Price at number 3, right, in the starting situation. I think Jake Allen's probably the best backup goaltender in the league. He's up there. Jake Allen, for all of the slings and arrows thrown at him in St. Louis over a couple years there before Binnington came in and saved the day, as a backup, he looked fantastic this past season. And in some ways, he outplayed Binnington in the playoff series against Vancouver. I'm sure that Montreal playing Boston, Montreal will take Boston out next time. They're due. It's often a bad matchup for Boston, and I think we're going to get back to that soon with Nick Suzuki coming along and now Romanov on the blue line, and now they've added Allen in net. It just all adds up that Montreal's going to be the bane of existence to the Bruins soon enough, and that'll make Montreal fans happy and Bruins fans upset, and people love it when I'm upset as a Bruins fan. So that just works out for everybody, which means I get views and I get more subscribers because we want to see this guy miserable. It works out for everybody. Allen as the backup for Price is exactly what Montreal needed for the same reason that Marc-Andre Fleury needed a rest. Carey Price never gets a night off. They have no faith in a goaltender in Montreal. Now they do. They finally do. And I think that this allows Caden Primo to play in the minors, to get the time he needs in Laval, to get that experience, and then come up when he's ready. Caden Primo is close. But if he's close enough, then next summer they lose Allen to Seattle in all likelihood, maybe, right? If they don't, they can trade him after because somebody's going to lose a goaltender to Seattle they don't want to lose. And then Primo becomes the backup next year. I saw when Jake Allen signed, like, oh no, Primo's going to be stuck in the minors now for years. No, for one season, and then they'll probably figure out a way to get him in the year after. But I think with Price and Allen, I think Montreal's got the best tandem in the league. There you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And don't be surprised if there's power rankings on Saturdays. This week it's goaltending tandems. Maybe I'll do a power rankings of best top 2 centers in the league. So which teams have the best 1-2 punch down the middle. Best defense, a defense core in the NHL, that kind of thing. So stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for watching. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Especially if you want to see me miserable as a Canuck fan or a Stars fan or a Bruins fan, because it happens all the time. So I understand it's very entertaining to watch. Thanks again for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.